From KPRC2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Khambrel Marshall.
So what's going on in this country? The political battles are all over the place, from the border and immigration, with a big showdown in the works for the next week, to the state Senate voting to grant the authority to overturn Harris County elections if conditions warrant. Man, there's a lot going on. And then there's the debt ceiling debate. Which party will be responsible if the country defaults on its debt? And there's much more. How can we sort it all out? Well, we've got some very good help this morning. Dr. Mark Jones, political science fellow at the Baker Institute for Public Policy at Rice University. Dr. Geronimo Cortina, University of Houston, Population Health Director of Faculty Research Initiatives, also Associate Professor in the Department of Political Science. Good morning to both of you. We have a lot to talk about. We've got 23 hours to do it. We need that much, right? We're not going to have that much. Hey, immigration policy, this whole thing, Title 42, was it needed? And now that it's ending, what does it mean for our immigration policy? You first.
Well, it was never really needed, maybe at a small point in time, but it was really designed by the Trump administration to be able to deport people who otherwise would have been eligible to request asylum and remain in the United States while their asylum claims are being processed. Biden was under pressure initially to get rid of it since it was a Trump-era policy, but since he found it also convenient to use, he's kept it for a while, but he's pretty much used it as long as he can. It's going to fade away now, and you're going to see more immigrants coming to the United States now because they know that once they cross over, request political asylum, in about 3/4 of the cases they'll get it, and then that gives them the ability to stay here and work and live for somewhere between 2 and 5 years.
Was 42 necessary, do you think?
Well, I mean, it's necessary if you look at it from a public health perspective. Was it really, really necessary? Well, that's debatable, right? But the point now is that the Biden administration has been preparing itself to enact Title 8, and Title 8 is expedited removal. So with expedited removal, what happens along the lines what Mark is saying is if there is a credible threat, then you go through the whole, formal process of a hearing. If there is no credible threat, then you're going to be deported immediately. Mexico just signed a new agreement with the United States in terms of receiving more people that are going to get deported through Title 8. And in the meantime, since 2022, 2023, we have seen that Title 8 deportations, according to CBP data, have increased, surpassing the numbers that Title 42 expedited removals have been taken. So we see that change, and obviously we see that the machinery is working, and in addition, they're going to send more resources to the border.
So that being the case, is the immigration policy as it's going to be, do you see it as being effective? Or is there any such thing as an effective immigration policy in this country or in the future in this country as you see it?
Well, there could be if we had a bipartisan immigration reform, but that's unlikely to ever be passed. As the result is, we're stuck with an asylum policy that's not made for the massive number of people who are coming to request asylum. It was more designed for the era where people were fleeing political persecution in the Soviet Union or Cuba in small numbers. It's not geared up to be able to handle 200,000 people from El Salvador, 300,000 from Honduras, 500,000 from Guatemala and Haiti requesting political asylum. Because if you go through the process the way it's supposed to be used and effectively follow the rules, even if you expedite and try to kick out a few more people who don't pass the barrier, it's still a low enough bar that you're going to have to give people their day in court, and our system simply can't handle that.
So the politics promise to get worse. Governor Abbott's continuing to send migrants by bus to other cities. Florida Governor DeSantis recently got the legislature to give him $12 million to do the very same thing. So the escalation doesn't seem anywhere in sight. Is there any opportunity that you see down the road for any no, you're shaking your head.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's what Mark says, right? We haven't got a serious immigration reform, whether it's piecemeal, comprehensive, whatever you want to call it. And the problem is this issue of polarization. So parties cannot sit down at the table and really discuss the policy options, because immigration policy is a regional phenomenon, right? You cannot just control it. You have to manage immigration policy. And what Mark said is our immigration policies are completely outdated. right, to reflect what's going on in the world, what's going on in Latin America and other countries. And the problem is also that immigration policy provides you with enough political capital on both sides of the aisle to highlight certain issues. So the status quo provides incentives to both political parties to say, you know what, we're going to wait a little bit because this helps me with my constituents, and the other political party says the same thing.
So it's outdated, the policy is outdated, and our elected officials are sent to office to try to fix those kinds of things. And what you're saying is basically they're just going to do this and point the other guy. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. No hope in the future.
And hope in the future. So we'll thank you for this optimistic assessment. I appreciate it. Hey, state legislature coming to an end of its session soon. I want your opinion on a couple of things here. One of the most recent Senate bills passed gives them a chance to overturn the election in Harris County. The Secretary of State will be able to do that if they think there's something wrong there, irregularities. How unprecedented is it for something like this to happen? And does it look like it's only a Harris County issue that's being taken on by some of those leaders at the state level?
Yeah, this is purely directed at Harris County for a couple of reasons. One, it's the largest county, it's a blue county, and its elected officials have consistently sort of poked the bear in Austin, which makes them different from, say, the Democrats who run Dallas County and the city of Dallas, or Bexar County in the city of San Antonio. They also, while poking the bear, have screwed up their past two elections in a pretty egregious way, unlike the other 253 counties. So they put a target on their back. The result is that Republicans in Austin are adopting this nuclear option. I don't think they would ever want the Secretary of State to actually overturn elections. So what they're saying is, if you don't handle your own problems in Houston, if you don't make sure that every ballot place has paper ballots, at least within an hour, then you run this risk. I don't think they have any desire, actually, though, to get into the process of trying to overturn election results, because that would be a constitutional, legal, and political nightmare.
So, but I remember when they put a law into place for HISD, and they said, well, we don't really want to take over HISD, but that's what happened here. So I don't know if I'm as optimistic as you are that they won't do anything there.
Well, obviously, once it becomes law, once it becomes the law of the state, they will have the prerogative to do whatever they see best. Whether it has political consequences, legal consequences, of course, it's going to have those things. But it's going to be on the books, and the possibility exists. And, the issues, whether paper ballots were missing, whether this, whether that, that's a different discussion, right? But they can find, or someone can find, saying that, they didn't like the shade of the trees on a poll location, and therefore X, Y, or Z. So it has, that potential, and I think it's opening the door for, basically taking the will of the people one way or the other and just completely change it. Elections are going to have problems, right? Because elections are run by humans, and we're going to have those problems. So whether the problems that we have change the will of the people, well, that's a different discussion.
Well, we're going to talk more. You're going to say?
Well, yeah, I think the law says that if paper ballots are not provided within an hour, if they're absent for more than 2% of the polling places, then the Secretary of State has the prerogative to overturn the election. I think as long as Harris County makes sure that there are ballots there, and in the end of the day, Harris County also has to reform its pretty ridiculous election day voting system with 782 voting sites. We don't need that many. If they ratcheted that down and organized it more effectively, had paper at the sites, I think they won't come into any problems with the Secretary of State. Like I said, I don't think the Republicans would want to be put in the position of overturning the will of voters in Harris County.
All right, well, from your mouth to the election gods. Hey, more with you guys in a minute. We're going to